Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name's Rory Paquette. I know you know that already, but I just like to remind myself how lucky I am to be sitting in this chair. Folks, without you out there listening to our program and doing everything you're doing, I wouldn't be able to be sitting in this chair at all. So I am grateful for you and everything that you do. I'm grateful for the subscribes, the shares, the listens, and all of the DMs. It's absolutely wonderful what you do for us here at the show. And when we made the move to publishing 7 days a week, you guys all showed up hard. You loved it. You've been sending messages, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, if you're a friend of the program, and I know you are, you know what we have to do. We got to pay a couple of bills. So, let me take a sip of my preferred beverage. Oh man, that's good stuff. And you know what we're drinking. It's Freedom Hill Coffee. At Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Go check them out, look them up. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. They brew a mean bean. It's a mean cup of joe. It's absolutely fantastic coffee, folks. They do all the right things for all the right reasons. They support veterans, which is why we support them the way that we do. If you're out there and you're a veteran, folks, power to you. We love you. Thank you for your service, and this is your home. Folks, Freedom Hill Coffee, at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Go check them out. Let me get one more sip because I got to be able to keep up with this young buck on the other side of the table for me. All right, there we go. I'll be drinking that throughout. Folks, this is a very, very special episode. I don't normally get to interview a father and a son, especially about the same project. This is an incredible story. The gentleman I have on today, I had his father, Robert, on earlier. It was an honor speaking with him. He had a great story about what him and his son have been through, and we talked about their book. And this is it right here, Without Restraint. They both wrote this book. Robert wrote one part. Ryan wrote the other part. And folks, we have Ryan here with us today. So, for the first time, a father son combo on the Power of Man podcast, and I'm incredibly honored to have this man with us today. He is a professional ski mountaineer, which I can't wait to find out what that's about. He lives in a seriously cool van that's all set up for himself. I almost wish I was in my 20s again because that's really cool. And he is a mental health advocate. Folks, please welcome to the show Ryan Delena. Ryan, how are you doing, man?
Doing wonderful. Went for a little hike today. So feeling good. It was nice to connect with the trees and the moss and get in the right mind frame to have a chat here.
Perfect, perfect. Now, I know you love the outdoors. You are a professional ski mountaineer, is that right?
Um, it's kind of hard to describe what I do. I would say by trade, I would describe myself as a rock climbing guide.
Oh, okay.
But in the winter time, I do a lot of ski mountaineering, and I'm an athlete for Elon Skis and a couple other brands. And I have a YouTube that I contribute to throughout the winter, which also pays me. So I don't do skiing for my full-time living in the way that, like, I don't know, maybe you could say Cody Townsend does. But I do ski at a high level and make a decent chunk of change from doing that. So that is always something I'm grateful for.
Nice. That's fantastic. Now I know that part of your story is that you and your family you had to overcome some obstacles when you were younger, and that's what the book is about is how you guys kind of handled that. Do you want to tell folks kind of how this all started, what the story is, where you were to begin this journey?
That's a bit of a complicated answer. I'm trying to think how I can condense a 15-year journey into an answer. But when I was younger, and by younger I mean like 4 or 5 years old, I was struggling to integrate
Mm.
into classrooms. I kind of just got up and wandered around the room. It was hard for me to focus. And, at that age, you don't really have much concept of a future, really, and how important uh, falling in line for the sake of kind of going along to get a lot. So if you told me what was going to happen to me, and I somehow had the capacity to uh, internalize that into action, I probably wouldn't have gotten and wandered around so much. But They decided based on my behavior in preschool that rather than have me go into public school, that it would be better for me to go into a therapeutic school
Hmm?
for kindergarten and first grade and onward. And that was really the beginning of this journey because ultimately, this therapeutic school, what made it different, aside from smaller classrooms and better, teacher to student ratios, was the fact that when you acted up, they could physically restrain you. And
Mm.
this meant, essentially, if you can picture a violent wrestling match with a kid and a full-grown adult, that's kind of what it is. They can slam you onto the floor. They can get on top of you. They can cover your mouth if you're being too loud in a way that makes you feel like you can't breathe. They can keep you there for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, however long it takes you to stop struggling. So I was going home with bruises and rug burns and was really just generally traumatized from the whole experience. And I was so young that the school was always able to frame it as like, oh, well, he acted up in such a way that like this needed to happen. And they taught my family how to do these restraints. They taught any babysitters we had how to do these restraints. They would literally have to come into the school and like get a training on how to do this. And ultimately, by the time I was 9 years old, I had full blown PTSD because I was just being in violent altercations every day at school. And it got worse with time because I learned to fear confrontation. So I would either fight or run whenever I sensed confrontation with an adult coming. And that just caused more and more of the events happen, less to become volatile. Um, it really, it could have just continued to get worse until my whole life fell apart as I got older. But what really kind of diverted the runaway train from crashing was going skiing with my dad. And for the first time, he saw me in my element. He saw me happy when I was on the skis, and he started to doubt that the school was right about me. He started to think maybe the way they'd been telling us to do this is wrong, and he stopped doing restraints at home and tried to de-escalate any sort of situations with talk instead of with physical altercation. And he noticed that I was suddenly a lot better at home than I was at school. The problem is once you're in these school systems, you can't just get out. If you try to go back to public school, they'll be like, well, he's in this school that offers more accommodation we do and he's struggling, so how are we supposed to expect that he's going to come back here and do well? So my only options were to stay at this school and continue to have this happen to me or go to other schools that did the same thing or worse. So it put me in a difficult position that took 10 or so years to get out of.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's part of the story that's so unbelievable is that all of these people were saying this is the right thing to do to put you in these situations. Your parents don't really have any choice but to believe these
Mm-hmm.
folks. And then you go skiing
Mm-hmm.
and everything changes. What was it about skiing, man, that lit you up so much?
I to this day struggle for a clear answer on that. There's a lot of things I love about skiing. I love just the act of it itself, the movement of making turns downhill. I love being out there in the cold and connecting with nature. I love challenging myself. Um, but I don't know if I could have articulated any of those things to you when I first clicked into skis. I just knew I loved it instantaneously. It was really it was just so pure. It was clear to me instantly that this was going to be a really big part of my life. And I tried so many other sports. We say in the book that the garage is a graveyard of attempts at finding me something to do. We had, you know, baseballs and footballs and tennis rackets and golf clubs. Like there were so many things. Anytime I showed a little bit of interest in something, my dad would be like, well, let's try this. And I'd pick it up, try it out, put it down, never come back to it. But skiing stuck instantly.
Nice, nice. Did the rock climbing come after that? I'm curious.
Rock climbing came in my attempts to have a summer hobby. The unfortunate thing about skiing, unless you go to South America or New Zealand, um, is that the season's only so long, right? There's only so much snow throughout the year. So my first hobby was exploring a swamp with my friends. We would try and cross the swamp. It would take us like 9 or so hours. We'd battle through beaver ponds and like copperheads in the tall grass and come back home all muddy. And when I was a teenager, I tried parkour, which I liked quite a lot. But I ultimately aged out of those classes. And by the time that happened, I had found rock climbing. I tried mountain biking too for a couple days, and I realized that I was like probably gonna get myself into a bad situation if I kept mountain biking. Turns out falling on roots and rocks and sticks hurts a lot more than falling on snow. And you're a lot more likely to fall mountain biking, and it has this habit of throwing you head first when you fall. So rock climbing, I as I got into ski mountaineering and was playing around with ropes more, it just seemed like a logical progression. It was something I always wanted to do. And my friend, also named Ryan from high school, he was a little bit into it too. So I was like, great, I finally have a driver's license. I have enough equipment between the two of us and somebody who's at least half willing to go rock climbing with me. Let's go to Rumney, which is a world-class sport climbing destination that's about 2 hours north of where I lived. Let's go to Rumney and just figure it out. And we did figure it out, and thankfully I found some mentorship because we probably should have gotten a little bit more instruction before we started just going out and lead climbing on our own. We got pretty lucky to not encounter a bad situation there.
Yeah, that actually sounds kind of scary, but you seem to really love it.
Yeah, I mean, when I tell you, we literally watched how to lead climb, how to catch a lead fall, and Silence by Adam Ondra, which is one of the hardest climbs in the world for inspiration. And then we were like, cool, let's go. But yeah, it's definitely it's a spectacular sport. I never thought I would love anything as much as I love skiing, but it's just such a beautiful movement art, and it challenges you in a way that's really meaningful. I feel like to practice really any grade that's hard for you in rock climbing, you have to overcome a lot of obstacles as well as physical. I think self doubt, if that's something you struggle with, comes up a lot. I always tell my clients that rock climbing is a mirror, and anything that you show up to the crag with tends to come out when you get into spaces where you're challenged. So it's helped me work through a lot, and it's also just cool to hang upside down and play around on steep cliffs. Um, but yeah, it was interesting. Skiing came so naturally to me. I feel like I never kind of encounters parts of myself, whereas rock climbing really kind of dug a lot of that out of me.
Yeah, well, that sounds amazing. When we go back to your story a little bit, when you first found the skiing and it was, making you feel pretty good and, it was lighting you up like that. Um, your dad started to de-escalate things and you guys kind of started to change how you related to each other, like how you
Yeah.
got treated and what the plan was. Now, you said you couldn't go back to the school. Um, what were your options at that point?
So at that point, my options were we could homeschool me, which we thought about doing, but um, I definitely have a good bit of ADHD in my life. I think even without just the wild upbringing that I had, it would have been hard for me to focus if it was just me at home and a leader. So it never seemed like a great option. Um, and there's the social aspect. I wouldn't really have gotten to have friends. The other option was to just go to another one of these schools and hope it worked out better. Um, and the third option is kind of the wild card that we came around to. Um, we tried a 45-day evaluation at a different program that was slightly less restrictive. They ended up rejecting me. I just wasn't doing well enough for them to feel like it would be a good fit. And we thought maybe if I go to a, a hospital and get on medications, that I'll calm down enough to maybe try an evaluation at a different program, or at least they can say like, okay, he has all these restraints on his record, but he's on medication now. We thought it would be a door to get me into better options, and it ended up being the worst thing we ever did. We thought I was only going to be there for a night or two. Turns out when you sign the papers, they can just keep you for as long as you want. So I ended up being there for 2 weeks. I completely unraveled. They put me on this medication called Lamictal, and ultimately they upped the dose way too fast. And my mom literally told them, like, I've researched this medication, you shouldn't be doing this. And they're like, are you a doctor in your spare time? And sure enough, the side effect you can get from having too much Lamictal too fast ended up happening to me. And I was getting the beginnings of Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which is literally a disease that makes your skin just like get all these rashes, blister, and then fall off. And it kills a lot of people. And within a week of being out of the hospital, I had these rashes popping up my body. So we stopped the medication immediately. And all of a sudden, back at square one, we've gone through this traumatic experience of me being stuck in a mental hospital basically for nothing. Um, so I ended up finding another school that did take called the Walker School. Um, that program was decent. It still had its challenges. They still did restraints, but I felt like they were willing to work with me a little bit more. And they had a lot of these kind of newer interns who, maybe just didn't have the heart for it as much, and they were more willing to talk with me and work with me and sort of challenge, like, all right, you're turning this molehill into a mountain right now. You don't need to do that. Can you see why this isn't that big a deal and why you don't need to make it this big a deal? So I did a lot of healing there, but ultimately I aged out of that program. And once again, we were looking at options. And I ended up going to this place where I did kind of the back half of my middle school years and the beginning of my high school years, called the Perkins School. And not the one for the blind, there's two of them.
Oh,
um,
okay.
People ask me that all the time. I can see. It would be hard for me to ski this well if I couldn't, I think.
I would
Um,
imagine.
but but yeah, ultimately that program was much worse than Walker, and it was a very difficult transition for me to go from feeling like we were on the up and up to all of a sudden I'm back in this incredibly restrictive setting. I can't go to the water fountain by myself. I can't go to the bathroom without somebody standing by the door. And the slightest bit of acting up, um, they can either A, restrain you, or B, they can put you in what they call the seclusion room, which is a room with a doorknob on one side, and that's the outside. And then you're just in a room with no windows, just walls. And they can keep you in there for as long as you want. And I learned that apparently I have panic attacks when people shut me in a room that I can't get out of. So
Hmm.
I kind of lived in fear of being put into a seclusion room all day, and they frequently resorted to that. So that program really wasn't going well for me, and I'd gotten to the point where if I wasn't getting any better options, I decided I was just going to drop out, get a GED, and figure out whatever's next. And ultimately, my dad screamed at somebody in a meeting and managed to get some more information that we should have been given for years and weren't given. Um, it's kind of long and complicated. I'll spare you the details, but ultimately we found a person that we hadn't talked to yet who was able to get me better options, and she had recommended that I go to the cold program, this program that's kind of attached to Acton Boxborough High School, but not actually part of it. And it was a weird program. There was only 15 kids who went to school there. It looked like, the lunchroom and a break room in an office. It was like not a very big building. It didn't feel like you were actually going to school. But they didn't do restraints, which was huge. So for the first time in my life, I was at a school where I didn't feel immediate threat of something bad happening to me if something very minor happened.
Yeah.
So I did a year at that program, and despite all of their resistance, I ultimately went back to public school in 2017. Um, oh, I'm sorry, 2018. And I
Okay.
did my junior and senior year of high school in public school, which was absolutely the best thing for me. And I really shoulda, coulda, woulda been there the whole time. But I do believe these things happen for a reason. And ultimately, I think the depth of who I am came from the journey that I went through. And I don't know if I would have become that person if not for this experience. So I'm just glad I got to make it back to society at all.
Yeah.
Um, I think I always would have had a chip on my shoulder if I never got to prove to myself that I could thrive in public school. I think I
Yeah.
always would have felt like an outsider. So it meant a lot to finally complete that journey.
So you going to the public school to finish up your high school career, that was something that your parents had to fight for pretty hard, it sounds like.
Absolutely. It was just a mountain of logistical nightmare
Yeah. Yeah.
and opposition at every corner.
Yeah. What okay, so you get to finish that way. You come out. Skiing is your passion, and you're looking forward to life after high school now. What happens then?
So kind of towards the tail end of high school, I had gotten to the point in skiing where I was really skiing the hardest terrain that I could possibly ski in bounds, and starting to look at the mountains that don't have chairlifts and feel inspired. And one of my biggest inspirations during that time was this person named Andrew Drummond, who was making videos of skiing in the Mount Washington region. And anyone who knows the Mount Washington region has probably heard of skiing in Tuckerman Ravine. So ultimately, I um, saw these videos and I'm like, we have so much opportunity right here in our backyard. I need to start doing this. I need to learn how to climb mountains, not just ski them. So during my senior year of high school, I kind of started my journey into ski mountaineering. And basically, any weekend, any vacation day I had available, I was spending up in the White Mountains, just throwing myself at it, trying to find partners, going solo when I couldn't, working with guides, just like really just chomping at the bit to spend as much time in those mountains as I could. And they were teaching me a lot. And I also at that point discovered um, guiding kind of as a profession. My dad and I went on a trip to Antarctica, and we met a variety of incredible ski and mountain guides who have made a living taking people into the mountains and showing them the magic that's out there. So I knew that that was what I wanted to do. And I ultimately decided to enroll in an outdoor education program and also start working my way down the AMGA track. So the American Mountain Guide Association is kind of the certifying body that exists within America, and you have to complete a variety of resume items to apply for these courses and then pass these exams, and then you can become certified to guide. So I've kind of been going down that track ever since then. During that time, I enrolled at Vermont State University. At the time, it was called Northern Vermont University, and was up in Vermont, climbing and skiing and learning sometime in between. And I started one of the most important challenges that I've ever done with my life. I actually just completed it this year. Um, the Mount Washington region, for the longest time, did not have a specific guidebook for skiing. And when presidential skiing came out, it was the first definitive resource for that region. And I decided I wanted to ski every route in the book, which was an incredibly audacious challenge. A lot of these routes only form under very specific conditions. You already have the challenge that it's some of the worst weather in the world. It can be blowing 60, 70 miles per hour winds almost all winter long. So you have to wait for the very rare days when it's sunny and low winds and the avalanche danger is low. But not only that, you also have to hope that the wind sometimes blows irregular directions. On Mount Washington, it tends to always blow west or northwest. And so it loads east facing basins like Tuckerman Ravine and scours everything else. So you have to hope you get a storm that falls on, east or south wind to load some of these other gullies. You also run into the challenge where it can rain, and now you have a rain crust everywhere. There's routes that are considered ice climbs, so you have to ski these routes that have huge cliffs in the middle of them, and you need to build anchors and rappel over them. So it's not just a skiing challenge, it's a climbing challenge as well. You need to be able to climb ice. You need to know enough about rock climbing that you can build rock anchors to rappel over things. You need to have rope work skills. You need to have snow science skills and just a lot of fitness and a lot of free time on your hands. And even with all of that, the biggest challenge is just being there when the weather window is. I skipped a lot of class and other obligations and did a lot of days back to back to back in order to seize the opportunities when they came along. And I still feel like we really just had the universe on our side because some of the things we skied, they came in for a couple days, and I haven't seen them in the shape where a reasonable person would want to ski them since. So it was a very big challenge. Um, I also went on a variety of expeditions. I went back to Antarctica to tail guide. I went to Svalbard, which is in the Arctic north of Norway. It's an island archipelago. And then um, my mentor Brennan and I, we went on an expedition to Baffin Island in the Canadian Arctic, and we skied huge otherworldly coolars out there, along with one of his friends, Jeff, and then we joined another team of professional skiers, um, Cody Townsend, Bjarne Salen, and Vivian Bichez. They were out there shooting a movie, and we kind of combined efforts. So we skied a bunch of the sort of famous descents out there, as well as two first descents, as far as we know. One of them we named the Birthday Couloir because we skied it on my birthday. The other one we named the Ford Explorer because it's on the Ford wall, and all of the lines that have been skied there, they named them after different Ford models.
Nice. Nice. Okay, that all
You're
sounds
laughing. What's funny about it?
no, I just because honestly, it sounds incredible, almost superhuman. I mean, I can't even imagine doing it. And you're just talking about it like it's, yeah, I just went out and did all this stuff. It's great, man. I mean, really, it's
It's
great. It's
really, I mean,
impressive.
there's a reason that a book exists, and like the college onward stuff isn't even in the book. Like I, it's hard to condense all of this into a short amount of time.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Let me ask you that. What made you and your dad decide you were going to write the book?
Ultimately, my dad had been reflecting on how crazy this journey was. Specifically, when we were skiing in Antarctica, he was just thinking about how at such a young age, I had people saying that they thought I was going to be dead or in jail by the time I was 18. And,
Yeah,
somehow we got from that to skiing all over the world together. And I'd become such a strong athlete. And I was now going to go to college, which to him was even crazier than me becoming an athlete because he always knew that I would ski, but he never knew how much of a regular life I would get to have. Um, so he really wanted to write about this for other people who, maybe were going through the same thing and didn't necessarily have a success story to look up to because I certainly didn't. And when he told me about it, I was initially very skeptical of it being a good idea because I had just worked so hard to finally get back to high school. And it was already weird enough for me to try and integrate with these people who had been together for 12 years. And I was absent. I was going through this journey that I didn't just want to like talk about at the lunch table.
yeah,
I this is kind of a big deal for me to just like talk about this on these podcasts. Like I I kept this secret from everybody. Um, I have I have a friend who unfortunately passed away by suicide. Who literally I think about every day. I never told him this happened to me. He had no idea, and I always wonder like what might have been different if he'd known that like my life wasn't perfect. That I go through stuff too. Maybe he could have had someone to relate to and whatnot. But during this time in my life, I was really just wanting to let everything just pass, like I'd gone through this journey. I was finally back into just the regular people world, and I could pretend that this never happened.
yeah,
If I put it all in a book, now I've attached it to me forever. Anybody I talk to for the rest of my life can Google my name and they can read about the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Um, that
yeah,
felt like a lot when I was 17 years old when we started writing this. It felt like a big risk, but he felt so strongly that it was going to help people that he was willing to do it, but change my name so I could be anonymous. And I thought a lot about that, and I was like, no, like, you know, what's the right thing to do here? Like, I should really be brave, and I should put this out here. Like, I shouldn't hide this part of me. So he gave me a list of 20 bullet points that were basically all of the things he had written about. And I never read any of his version until after we exchanged. So I wrote the whole thing. Then I think I read him the first three, and then the rest I just kind of worked on in silence. And then we swapped. And it was very interesting to swap because I realized we did not think about this journey the same way at all. And I kind of framed it as like I went through all these things, but they made me who I am. And thankfully, I'm here now and get to live this life. And he wrote it as this like tragedy of parenting mistakes and, look at the life I could have had it not been for, him listening to these so-called experts and letting this happen to me. And it was really interesting because I never knew he felt that way. And he would have taken all these things to the grave if we hadn't written this book together. And it gave me a chance to talk to him and, tell him that I didn't feel that way, that I didn't hold any resentment against him, that he didn't need to hold this against himself. So I think it was cathartic for both of us. Um,
yeah.
and originally we planned to do it as like a book one and book two thing, but we decided that, in the age of, you know, Instagram and TikTok that people weren't going to have the attention for maybe one book, let alone two. And we decided to commingle them into what you have now.
Yeah, that's a very unique way of doing it. I mean, I noticed right away when I started reading it that there were two voices in it. I didn't know that when I started it, though. I thought that was very unique.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I read a lot. I haven't seen that before. So
Mm-hmm.
that was really cool that you
Yeah,
guys
that was
did
one of
that.
the hardest things. Unless you read the back, you don't really know that. I kind of struggled with that a little bit myself. I ultimately, I like really didn't like the title when we came up with it. The Without Restraint, How Skiing Saved My Son's Life, because I was like, how are people going to know that I wrote it? I am the son. People are going to
Right.
think I have a son or that I wasn't part of this. But at the end of the day, once you open it up, um, you you understand, as you said. But through all of these steps, we came to the point where we're like, well, what else should we call it? And I'm like, well, I don't know. That kind of feels like the only way you can describe it, right?
Yeah. And without restraint, I mean, you're talking about actual restraints in some way also, aren't you?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I that was another one. Is I was like, I like kind of thought it was like sort of a little cheeky metaphor or something. Like I feel like I don't always like when titles are done that way, but then again I was like, well, I don't have a better name for it.
Right. So did this seem to fit for you in the end?
Ultimately, yes. I still feel like I have a complicated relationship with the story. But I'm glad it's out there, and we get a lot of messages from people, and I'm glad it's helped people. It's it's given me a chance to embrace and in a way be free from my past in a way, even though it is attached to me now. It doesn't bear as much weight as it did when it was this big secret.
Yeah.
So I love it for that reason. Um, I feel like I also sometimes I get sick of it. I feel like I either need to write something else or I need to sort of create something else in the world, because I feel like in some people's eyes, the most important thing that I've contributed to the world is a thing that I wrote when I was 17. I wasn't even a legal adult yet. It didn't come out until 2023, but that's the slow process of publishing, right? We were done with editing in like 2020.
Oh, wow.
So it makes me, I'm glad that we are putting together a film about the presidential ski project and skiing all the routes in that guidebook, because that feels more current to who I am now, than maybe Without Restraint does, because my life just feels so far from those times that it feels weird to like jump on an interview and talk about when I was like a teenager again.
Right. What makes you come on podcasts and talk about it then? I'm curious.
um I feel like it gives people who connect with the story a chance to connect with me and my dad in a way that is more meaningful. I feel like I've always enjoyed podcasts and interviews myself of artists that I like, or athletes that I like, writers that I like. um
Yeah.
I feel like listening to them talk about their everyday lives, and add context to the things that they've done and created in the world is like really cool. So I'm glad that like the people who connect with this story can have that. um and it's just a way for us to spread it to more people. We only have so much reach from our individual platforms, and you have a different audience base than I have. I attract a lot of skiers through my algorithm, but you might have people who aren't in ski world at all, but would like this story and could benefit from it, or they have a kid that's going through this, or they went through this when they were growing up in schools and they never felt like they had anyone to relate to. So
Yeah.
it's just a good way to get it out there.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're doing them. because it's great to get your perspective on this book also. It was very unique the way it was put together.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that different people get different things out of this book.
Mhm.
Like a father reading this book is going to get something different out of this book than, than his son might.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's interesting. I wondered if kids would read it too, but I got a comment on my YouTube not long ago from somebody who said that they were 11 and that their dad had them read it and that they really liked it. And I was like, wow, that's so cool, you know? Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't read anything unless you made me do it for homework when I was 11. So I'm stoked that there are 11-year-olds who like want to read our book, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I love what you're doing. Both of my sons read this, and my sons are
Mm.
24 and 21. And it was
What did they
funny.
think of it?
Yeah, we talked about it after they were done. They loved it, and what they said, they really got a lot out of your story. They felt the overcoming adversity from you, the finding victory, in finding what worked for you. And one of my sons said that it was inspirational because it basically just shows that you have to find what connects with your soul, no matter who you are, like skiing did for you.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's what they both said.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because y- yeah, we talk about that a lot, you know, of you know, it looks like a ski book and it was really hard for us to find a publisher who wanted to do it because you know, they didn't think there was enough of an audience for it because skiing is more niche. And I'm like, well, you know, the story could be about tennis, it could be about basket weaving, it could be about anything. It's finding the passion that mattered. It didn't really matter what the passion was, and I think anyone can relate to this story and can put it in the context of what they love to do, what they dream about, whether they ski or not.
Yeah. No, I loved that. I loved hearing that from them. And then, it was funny. I read it and I got something totally different out of it. As a father, I connected with that side
Mm,
of it, of course. And the way that I took it was this is a book that encourages, fathers especially, but parents, um, to fight against, you know, things that aren't right, no matter who's telling you. Don't just believe something because a doctor or administrator or somebody's telling you that's the truth or that's how it should be. It's a
mhm,
challenge to parents to, think for themselves and fight for their kids. And that's what
mhm,
I got out of it. So I mean, I think it hits a lot of people a lot very differently on a lot of levels.
mhm. Yeah, and you gotta let them grow in the way that they want to. I think that a big journey for my dad and I think he had this vision that I think a lot of parents have that you know his kid was gonna grow up to be like a better version of him. And I think when I wasn't turning out that way, you know, at such a young age, and he had all these school administrators and doctors saying, you know, what I wasn't going to be able to do. He just wanted to fix me so bad um, that, you know, he didn't necessarily stop and think, you know, what does Ryan want to be like? You know, how can we lean into Ryan's strengths instead of trying to bash him for his weaknesses until he, you know, conforms into whatever he's supposed to be. And I think it's you know it's very challenging because to some degree like everybody needs to like uh conform to some degree. You can't just like not go to school, but you also um don't have to follow the exact same path that everybody takes and you know go to a good college and become a doctor or a lawyer. You know, there's lots of ways to make it in this world, and everybody can offer something unique and beautiful to it and contribute to it in a way that's positive. And I think encouraging kids to find what they offer to the world and how to foster growth in that is really important.
I think so too. That's a great way to say that. That really is. I love that. You mentioned that there was life after the book and that,
Sure.
talking about college and that sort of thing. As we kind of wind this down, where are you now? What's happened since the book? What other awesome things have you accomplished?
Of course, I mentioned a few of those things. Going on those expeditions, going and skiing in the Arctic and skiing in the Antarctic again, and climbing the Grand Teton. Getting really into rock climbing and um, you know, learning how to do a new thing and ultimately doing that in a professional setting now, teaching others how to climb. I think one of the funniest things is that I got into guiding rock climbing before I got into guiding skiing. Um, there's a an avalanche course that I haven't taken yet called the Pro One that I need to take before I can apply for the ski guide course. So I think a lot of people are confused by that of like, oh, didn't you just start rock climbing recently? Like, how are you already guiding that but not skiing? Um, but yeah, I took to rock climbing really fast, and I took my single pitch instructor course and exam, took my rock guide course and my alpine guide course, and I've been working for Acadia Mountain Guides. So I'm on an island called Mount Desert Island. It's off the coast of Maine. It's what I like to call the beach town, mountain town, and ultimately it's one of the coolest and most unique places, I think, in all of New England, if not the country. It's got spectacular mountains and rock climbing right on the seacoast. And you can be in one of the gnarliest climbing situations with the ocean crashing beneath you and the wind howling, and then drive 20 minutes into town and have stellar ice cream shops and, lobster rolls and whatnot right near there. So it's an interesting duality to this place. And I work at Acadia Mountain Guides, and people uh, call us and sign up to learn to rock climb or to learn specific skills. And I take them out to the cliffs and I teach them how to move their bodies in these mountains and use technical systems and accomplish their goals. And when it gets too cold to be here, I go into the White Mountains and to the mountains beyond. And I still am continuing to, chase that intrinsic motivation of trying to put tracks in the places that don't make that much sense to ski. I feel like my brain is always spinning on, this remote place in the world. How can we get there and ski there? This line that, has all sorts of technical ski mountaineering terrain, whether it be ice bulges or a cliff in the middle or, this really complicated approach. What techniques can I apply, whether that be rope work, whether that be, including an overnight and, now we're using winter camping skills, whether it be, glacier travel or something. How can I access these mountains that can be skied if you just throw enough shenanigans at them and ski them? And I'm hoping to continue to find inspiration and to continue to chase that dream all around the world. So it's what I'm up to now.
I love it. I love it. That's a great goals, man. Absolutely great goals. You got a great story, brother. And
Thank you.
I love that you're out there telling it and inspiring other folks. I really, really do. So I hope you keep it up. And I'm looking forward to hearing about your future challenges. So, as you continue to achieve those and knock those down, I'd love to have you back sometime and maybe talk about
Thank
those
you.
instead of just talking about, how you got here, talk about what you're doing now.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Listen, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate you coming on the show and telling your story. Ryan, you're amazing, man. And the stuff you overcome and the way you handle it, really impressive. So I'm glad I got to know you a little bit. Thank you for coming on, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. For anyone listening, if you want to find me, you can find me on Instagram at extreme_Ryan_Delena, on YouTube as just Ryan Delena. You can find our book, Without Restraint, How Skiing Saved My Son's Life, the son being me, on Amazon or anywhere else books are sold. And if you want to book me for a session, call Acadia Mountain Guides and ask for Ryan. If you tell them you came from a podcast, they'll probably know which Ryan. We have multiple.
Okay, awesome. I love it. You got to get that business going, man. Get that business plug in there. That's perfect. That's perfect. All right. Professional ski mountaineer, mental health advocate, and co-author of Without Restraint, an awesome book. You've absolutely got to read it, folks. It's a great story, and you will get something different out of it than anybody else. It's very unique. So go take a look at it. Ryan, once again, thank you, brother, for being on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you. You too. Folks, that's another episode of the Power Man podcast. The reason that we bring powerful men like this on here with these powerful stories is because, we want you to take your power back. We want you to go out there and be a better provider, a better protector, a better leader tomorrow than you are today. I want you to go out there and be a better father, a better husband, a better man tomorrow than you are today. And the reason that we want that for you is because you have value and you matter. And at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.